And now comes Judith, who can tell, when you have a high number of candidates, how to pre-screen and select in order to find the best candidates to work with.
Welcome this much interest. This is a very interesting topic for online recruitment, selection and test in general, and online testing is even more interesting. I'm a labor and organizational psychologist. I have managed our company since 1991, the PsyOn Management Consulting. Our methodologies are validated, repeatable and bias-free. We are always in some kind of development. Here are our references. On the one hand, I wanted to show you which companies we work with. On the other hand, this list of references is also linked to the online assessments. Here in the upper left corner, you can see Alcoa, Arconic, Denso, Lear. These are from the middle part of the country. Bonduelle, Lego, Jabil and Six are from the other parts of the country, so it is nationwide. We went everywhere, we did face-to-face and group assessments there. A little history. In the 80s, during the time of full employment, I started working when testing was the utmost importance, and every large corporation had a labor psychology lab to find tasks for people with the least risk to themselves or to their. When I started working, there were between 10 and 12 fatal accidents before the laboratory each year, which was reduced to zero by occupational psychological tests. Then came the heroic era, when multinational companies came along, the economy was transformed, and then they started looking for the best performers. The safety aspect has been left a bit in the background because competitive testing has started to spread. How many tasks, in what time, with how many correct solutions. The results gave the ranking. These usually measured knowledge and skills. Even back then, we measured something completely different. And then the third phase, when the supply of the labor force began to decline, people almost disappeared. 3 years ago, when started organizing on Monday, the people for Thursday through Friday. While on Thursday morning, 15 of the group of 20 arrived, there were 10 in the afternoon, 3 showed up on Friday morning and no one on Friday afternoon. From Monday to Thursday, the company practically lost. It became clear that even those 3 days were enough to let people find a new job. We could no longer go out to so many places, thus we began to look for new solutions for the assessment. Because I also want to show what kind of tests I'm talking about. There is a big difference in the HR profession, and there are 2 large groupings. One is completely against psychological tests, but I can understand because there are a lot of tests circulating in the communities, even spread by multinational consultants, that everyone knows that it can be manipulated so that people know how they can make a good impression of themselves. I met a plant manager who was able to tell on the 480 question California personality inventory which questions he would answer differently in next year's career selection program. Because he just wanted to improve his results so as not to overdo it but still show progress. However, for 480 questions, this is quite significant. What we use are instrumental measurements, but we also have questionnaires, of course. A fourth game, for example, they asked to measure technical and math skills to know in what grade people can perform maintenance work or how much statistical process control should be taught to them. Therefore, it was not used as a selection criterion, but as extra information. This is what they are. These are instruments. People sit and work. We are not curious how many of them are good ones, but the pace at which they do their job, and the pace and precision with which they do it. Will that be good for the company? Will it be good for the people? If they can withstand the load, they can get the job done. What you see here is a drawing task. You see a very simple thing, the houses below. This is a drive for performance test we also use in the career counseling, and it works very well. They have to draw houses for 4 minutes, and it is very easy for the facilitator to learn. These are not questionnaires. These kind of tests are rarely being used nowadays. The industry that was built to produce these instruments by the early 90s had practically disappeared with the demolition of an. These instruments are still available but are rather costly. We measure how one works. It is not about labeling, it is about how a person works. Since people were gone, we suggested to our many partners in the country that we could implement these instrumental measurements online. People can do this when they walk in one by one and not in groups, when a candidate has just arrived, sits in front of the internet, and do the tests themselves there, even without supervision. We began to see, for example, in the 9-minute monotony tolerance task, there are people who work a little in the first minute, then they do something in between, and in the last minute. We have seen this with a frequency which was in contrast to psychological studies with supervision, because people just didn't allow themselves not to work, but they did something in the 9 minutes, taking the assignment as a school test. Here, on the other hand, they sat in front of the screen and accomplished exactly only what they have just expected from themselves. However, there were also those who worked much harder as they felt they had to work a miracle here. Then we began to study by statistics, by factor analysis, to find out what we measure at all. Because it was a traditional result of how long, how much they did, what their drive for performance was, what their tolerance to monotony was. But from the information obtained from, to say, a 4-minute task, the difference in performance between the first and the 4th minute, if positive or negative, if their energy was lost or increased, or how well they worked for, say, 9 minutes. This became a secondary measurement range that we identified. We are now over 4,000 cases with these online assessments, and it turned out that these results can be divided into 3 areas. One is if there will be a problem with discipline or a problem with integration in the company. Because let's say they don't follow the rules, they don't read the instructions correctly, or do not pay attention to work accurately, or one is so agile that say can't sit through the 20 minutes until these tasks end. So this is one. The other group we can identify will have a performance problem or have such a performance motivation on their own that they want to work and has the energy to do it, feeling they can change the world. Will they really do what needs to be done? Or if not, what tools are needed to persuade them to perform? There was a girl, a young mother, who had to have a job to earn money. She was sent to a very large store to work because they thought everyone could clean. 2 days later she was fired because she did not clean. We analyzed her results and it turned out that the girl depended so much on supervision or external control that since she was not told what area she needed to clean in an hour, she couldn't even start working. We proposed to put her on a packaging line between 2 people where one pushes her to the workpiece, the other pulls that away, and thus with this relocation we achieved that next month she became worker of the month because she worked so well. We can also say what kind of work, what group of people to assign a person to, and what kind of leader would be the best for them. And the most interesting thing is that we can also draw a leader profile based on the results, which shows how strong of a leader the person best to assign to, how much one can expect them to learn, or does the leader need to repeat the instructions 5 times. We can provide a practical guide to people, and here I refer to the process of introduction to the company, that onboarding that requires practically 3 months of experimentation. With this methodology we can save that. As soon as one enters, already care must be taken to ensure discipline, to be in a group and in such a team where people also pay attention to follow the rules, to know what will be critical and what are the things where less attention is required, because the associates will perform by themselves. We were also quite surprised that the technology not only does mean that one put the tasks in an online interface, but a whole new measuring range has been opened. We get information that we can't really get with physical face-to-face measurements. And then here are some examples of who used it even before the pandemic. A pharma company where if there is a single quality defect, the factory will be closed, so you have to be very strict. Our new partner is a factory that has hired 1,000 people, but they have large turnover rate. And now after 1,000 people, they decided to implement a stable selection process, verifying in what extent their turnover was due to inadequacies in the selection process or how much it can be decreased. We have a car rental company that realized that empathy is important in customer service, but more importantly, if people tolerate monotony well, because they repeat the same thing over and over, sitting 8 to 12 hours a day. Or with the salespeople, either to put GPS in the car or they will complete the route by themselves. Where it also worked very well, labor was brought in from Ukraine. A few years ago, it was the rule that only those could come to Hungary who had a signed employment contract and proven residence. So it was very important to have an employment contract with the people who would surely work and work well. They were in Ukraine, they connected to the internet and did the assessment remotely. 18 of the 12 people in a group had come to remain in their country. We have a company that works with several hiring service companies. HR outsourced these tasks to recruiters, and suddenly the hiring process improved because it became visible which recruiter provided what level of candidates and where the profile needed to be changed of the people they were looking for. We have companies that use tests by tradition, and some time ago someone knew what they were for. But as they passed on to each other, the information was lost. Moreover, new products are already being produced, work has changed, and practically what they measure is far from its original purpose for compliance, fit, and especially onboarding. We have had these assessments online before the pandemic, and we could use it very widely. Now these tests do not require any observer to be present, and unlike in the case of paper-pencil tests, where there is even a time limit, one has to measure time there, must prepare the paper, spread it out, get it back. Here people are left alone. We even ask that people stay alone so that nothing affects the way of how they choose their work behavior, what we see and certify during their tasks. That is all I wanted to say, and now let's continue with questions and conversation. Thank you. Thank you.